Close your eyes and imagine. It's the year 2025. A team of scientists drilling deep beneath Antarctica's icy surface stumbles upon something unthinkable. Massive oil reserves, larger than those of Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Russia combined. For centuries, Antarctica has been the last untouched wilderness on Earth, a frozen world protected by international treaties. But now, with billions of barrels of oil hidden beneath its ice, the most desolate continent suddenly becomes the most valuable land on the planet. What happens next? Does humanity protect this fragile land? Or does greed push us into a new era of conflict, chaos, and irreversible change? In our real world, the Antarctic Treaty system, signed in 1959, bans drilling, mining, and military activity on the continent. It was designed to keep Antarctica neutral, dedicated only to science and peace. But treaties are only as strong as the temptation to break them. If oil is discovered, the treaty shatters. Suddenly, Antarctica isn't a land of penguins and glaciers. It's a land of black gold. The first to move would be the world's superpowers. The United States, China, and Russia would send research ships that are scientific only on paper, but really there to scout drilling sites. European nations, already dependent on foreign energy, would demand their share. Even developing nations, desperate for resources, would fight for access. What starts as scientific exploration quickly escalates into a global resource race. Imagine the icy coastline of Antarctica turning into a modern-day gold rush. Ships line up at frozen ports, heavy machinery lands on untouched glaciers, and drilling rigs rise where only penguins once walked. Oil companies, backed by governments, promise cheap fuel and energy independence. Billions of dollars flow into these expeditions. Overnight, Antarctica goes from a forgotten wasteland to the new Middle East of the 21st century. But here's the catch. Extracting oil in Antarctica isn't easy. It's the coldest, harshest place on Earth. Temperatures drop below 70 degrees Celsius, storms rip across the ice, and half the year is locked in darkness. Building rigs and pipelines here would cost trillions, but the potential profits are even greater. Nations are willing to risk it all. Now imagine what happens to the global balance of power. For over a century, Middle Eastern countries have dominated oil markets. Wars were fought, alliances built, and entire economies shaped around this single resource. But if Antarctica becomes the new oil capital, the Middle East loses its power. Countries like Saudi Arabia and Iraq might collapse economically. New alliances form, centered not around the deserts of Arabia, but the frozen south. Whoever controls Antarctica controls the world's energy, and maybe the world itself. The environment, however, pays the heaviest price. Antarctica is one of the most fragile ecosystems on Earth. Its ice sheets regulate global sea levels, its cold waters drive ocean currents, and its untouched wildlife, penguins, seals, whales, depend on its stability. Oil drilling brings pollution, accidents, and spills. Imagine a massive oil spill beneath the ice, black liquid spreading into the Southern Ocean, killing fish, poisoning birds, and destroying food chains. Global warming accelerates as ice melts faster. Sea levels rise, flooding coastal cities around the world. The discovery that promised wealth could trigger a chain reaction leading to disaster. And then comes the military question. The treaty bans weapons in Antarctica, but if oil is at stake, do you really think nations would respect that? Picture military bases hidden beneath the ice, warships patrolling the southern seas, fighter jets circling drilling sites. A region once free of human conflict turns into the most militarized zone on the planet. Skirmishes break out, not in the deserts of the Middle East, but on the frozen plains of the South Pole. The possibility of World War III. Shifts from Europe or Asia to Antarctica. Technology also takes a strange turn. To survive Antarctica's brutal conditions, oil companies would have to invent new machines, robots, and drilling techniques. Autonomous rigs controlled by AI. Nuclear-powered icebreakers smashing through frozen seas. Underground pipelines stretching thousands of miles. Some of these technologies could push human progress forward. But at what cost? And what about climate change? We already know burning oil worsens global warming. Discovering a supply this huge guarantees humanity keeps burning fossil fuels for centuries longer. Renewable energy takes a back seat. Solar panels and wind farms are abandoned because oil is cheaper and more profitable. Antarctica, once the symbol of untouched nature, becomes the reason Earth warms beyond repair. By the year 2100, sea levels might rise several meters, drowning entire cities. Millions of climate refugees roam the planet, all because we couldn't resist the temptation of drilling the last frontier. But let's take this further. What if instead of fighting, the world actually cooperates? What if nations form a new alliance, sharing Antarctica's oil equally? Energy becomes cheap and abundant, lifting millions out of poverty. Global trade flourishes, and new wealth funds space exploration, medicine, and technology. Antarctica could become humanity's salvation instead of its curse. The reality, though, is more complicated. Human history shows us that when resources are discovered, conflict usually follows. Greed outweighs cooperation. If oil is found in Antarctica, it might not unite us. It might divide us like never before. Now imagine your daily life in this alternate future. Gasoline is cheap, but the news is filled with reports of wars in Antarctica. Superpowers clash over frozen drilling sites. The weather feels harsher every year. Storms stronger, summers hotter, winters shorter. You buy food, but prices are higher because climate change has ruined crops. The penguins and whales you once saw in documentaries? Extinct. Your children learn about Antarctica not as a land of snow and ice, but as the battleground that reshaped the modern world. So here's the question. If oil were discovered in Antarctica, would it be humanity's greatest fortune or our biggest mistake? History has taught us one thing. Every time humanity discovers new resources, we face a choice. Use them wisely, or let greed destroy us. If Antarctica hides oil beneath its ice, then our response will determine the future of the planet itself. Would we use it to build a golden age of prosperity? Or would we turn the last untouched continent into the final victim of our endless hunger for power?